Hello everyone, it's a great pleasure to be here and thank you to the organisers for inviting me. Data is one of those things that has gone in waves. So if you think back 10 years ago, data wasn't really that interesting. It then became a really sexy subject and everyone wanted to be a data scientist, and the salaries for data scientists went up. And 2 years on from that, we're in a kind of situation where a lot of clients, a lot of agencies are sitting around and saying, well, what does it actually mean? What can we actually do with data that enables us to do things differently? And lots of things change. I mean, if you think about just the last year, we've had an election in the US, where there's been a big conversation about the role of data and how did data contribute to Trump's election success. We've had Cannes, that some of you will be familiar from a marketing and an advertising point of view, that introduced a category called creative data, and this was the winner from last year. We've had agencies, digital agencies, ad agencies, like Possible, who are creating roles around data, creating new roles where people are involved in data. So data is a subject that everyone is now thinking about, but there are still some perceptions about really how much of marketing is data-led. And if some of you haven't seen the Saturday Night Live sketches that started last year around the Trump campaign, one of the best sketches that Saturday Night Live did this year was really about a marketing campaign. So I'll just show you a clip from a sketch from Saturday Night Live from earlier in the year about two teams pitching to a client for a campaign.
Thank you all so much for coming in today. There were just so many amazing commercials at the Super Bowl this year, and we are really looking to step up our game.
Yeah, we can't wait to see what you've come up with for Cheetos.
Well, it's an honor just to pitch.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Right, well, whenever you're ready, we will start with the team from Murphy and Kennedy.
We open on a little immigrant girl. She's dusty, she's tired, she's come a long way.
She looks up and sees a wall. How will she get over it?
A boy appears at the top. He throws down a rope. The rope is made from American flags.
The girl climbs the rope. She sees her new country for the first time, and she cries.
Hard cut. Cheetos.
Wow, I love that.
It's important, it's now, it's Cheetos.
Yes. All right, AK Foster, you're up.
Okay, so we open on a bunch of kids in a minivan.
They're roughhousing, they're playing around.
And their mom's like, hey, what's going on back there?
And they're like, just eating Cheetos, Mom.
Cut to Cheetos.
Huh. Okay.
Not really sure what the message of that ad is, but maybe.
I think it's like, eat Cheetos, they're good.
Yeah.
You know, we have one more pitch if there's time.
By all means.
We open on real people. No actors, no makeup, no lines, no lights, no props, no costumes, no camera, no Cheetos. Hard cut.
Cheetos.
I can't, that's incredible.
So not a lot of data involved in either of those campaigns, and I think there still is a perception that a lot of marketing that is done is really disconnected from a lot of the data and the insights which are generated. So I think one of the big debates going on in the industry at the moment is how do we really make data and insights drive a lot more marketing? What can we actually do? What's the potential in terms of how we can use data and insights? And just from a Kantar point of view, so those of you that may or may not be familiar with Kantar, those are our brands around the world. We operate obviously in Singapore and across Asia. with most of these brands, and most of these brands work on a range of data and insights issues for our clients, whether they're brand related, communication related, innovation, media, retail, really trying to understand why people are behaving the way they are, what they're actually doing. So it's pretty core to our existence to help our clients make sure that they use data and insights in the most cost-effective way possible and to really have great impact. So how do we think about this issue? I think the starting point is that the need for really great data and insights has never been greater. And it's never been greater because of the way that the world is changing. Now, some things haven't changed. Now, if you talk to most agencies, if you talk to most advertisers, some things are still the same. People's behavior is driven by a mixture of emotional and rational factors. Actually getting people to change their behavior is incredibly hard. You know, we have a lot of government clients around the world. The biggest single issue for our government clients is about behavior change. How do you actually get citizens to behave differently? Whether it's to stop smoking, to eat differently, to use digital services, actually getting behavior to change is really, really hard. And we know that consumers are not fundamentally brand loyal. There's a kind of myth out there that there's a huge amount of brand loyalty. But even in categories where people think there's a lot of brand loyalty, actually you're talking about 50% of consumers who keep on changing their behavior. So you don't have consumers who 9 times out of 10 always buy the same brand. So those things haven't changed, but the things that have changed are where people spend their time, how they spend their time, what they value, what they're influenced by. What has changed is what we call paths to purchase. So really understanding a longer purchase journey, what are the key moments where you need to influence people and how do you influence them? And the strength of local brands. We've seen around the world, whether it's in Malaysia or Indonesia or Vietnam or China or Brazil or Colombia or Nigeria, in every part of the world, the brands that are growing the fastest are local brands. They're connecting with consumers in a better way, they're more agile, they're faster. So there's lots of things that are changing, and it's in this kind of mix that we're trying to understand, really, how should we use data and insights? Now, a big change is obviously e-commerce. And we've got different e-commerce models around the world. You've got a model in the US like Amazon, which just sells directly. And those of you that may have read the articles this week, Amazon is likely to become the biggest apparel retailer in the US this year. Big changes there. You have a kind of e-grocery model like a UK. And you have, obviously, the e-marketplaces, which really have driven a market like China. And the growth of these kind of businesses is incredible. You look at Amazon Prime, and you look at the percentage of American households who now use Amazon Prime. We're up to almost 40% of all households. If you took this as a group, it would be the second biggest marketing community, the second biggest purchasing power community in the world. You know, bigger than every other market in the world, other than the US in terms of, and China in terms of actual purchasing power. So e-commerce is disrupting a lot, and it continues to disrupt. If you think about something like the Amazon Dash buttons, which some of you may have seen, where you simply get a button like this, you put it on your fridge. when you think you've run out of a particular brand, you just press it and the brand gets delivered directly to your door. That's all you need to do. So a lot of disruption there, and a lot of disruption in all categories. It's not just some of the traditional categories that we thought were being disrupted. And one of the most important things that is happening is that we're seeing data really come from many sources. We're seeing data come from loyalty cards, we're seeing data come from our phones, we're seeing data come from our fridges, we're seeing data come from our Fitbits. Everything is delivering data. There was an article that some of you may have seen in the Financial Times yesterday, which was talking about Tesla and self-driving cars. And the article suggested that the biggest competition for Tesla was going to come from non-auto manufacturers who would be able to undercut Tesla in terms of price, because actually the thing they want is the data from the cars. And the value of the data that is going to come from the cars will enable them to undercut in terms of price the value that Tesla is providing. So we're getting data from everywhere now. We even have examples of where the police are accessing data from Amazon Echo to actually understand what happened in a murder case. So data is everywhere, and the question is, how do we actually use it to best effect? And I think the way to think about this is that data forces us to do certain things, but also enables us to do many more things. So as an example, we're the leader around the world in terms of measuring media, in terms of understanding what media people consume. If you went back a few years, we used to measure what people watched on their TV sets. We now measure what's coming out of set-top boxes. We measure people's viewing out of the home. We're measuring what content people are consuming on their tablets, their iPads, their mobile phones. We're measuring the use of Twitter and other social media, WeChat, all kinds of social media, and the interaction between that social media and a TV program. Because you have some TV programs with the same kind of viewing figures, but one is much more engaging and generates a lot more social media conversation than another TV program. So it forces us to do things in a different way. If we want to be able to really tell a broadcaster or help an advertiser or help an agency understand content, we need to move away from just measuring TV to measuring total video. So technology data forces us to do that. At the same time, it enables us to do many different things. Our brands in Singapore, Kantar TNS and Kantar Millward Brown, are using social media to predict brand equity in a way that we could never do 3 years ago. So instead of having brand tracking programs which look backwards and help you understand what's happened in the past, it enabled us to really predict what brand equity will look like next month, and have that combination of looking back and looking forwards. So it enables us to do that. If I give you an example from a recent project that we've been doing for one of the big German manufacturers about self-driving cars, one of the issues that the manufacturer wants to understand is, what do people actually do when they're in self-driving cars? Which sounds like a ridiculous question, but if you're the driver in a self-driving car, what do you actually do? And that matters. I mean, it matters what you actually do. So let me show you a video filmed inside a car when we're doing this project. And I've just blanked out the actual driver for privacy reasons. So what you can see here is, here's the driver of the self-driving car who's doing stuff on his tablet, he's doing stuff on his phone. So we're getting data from watching this person in terms of what he's actually doing. We're getting data from the car because we're getting what's called telemetry data. We're getting all of the data in terms of how fast the car is going, when it's speeding up, when it's slowing down, when it's turning a corner. And we're getting data in terms of how the driver, not really a driver, but the person sitting in the driving seat is actually thinking about the road conditions. So if you think about this example, we're getting data from asking the person about what he's doing, from watching him, from getting the data from the car, and we're using all of that in combination to really understand what's happening within the car. And that kind of example is now everywhere. Let me show you an example of what one of our brands is doing around retail. So we do a lot of retail work. We help clients really understand how to drive their brands into different retailers, how they should think about the categories, how they should think about the shelf, the shopper experience. And again, we're using technology and data to understand a lot more about what people are actually doing when they come into a store, what they're looking at, how much time they're looking at a particular package, what they do when they pick something up. Now, how do we do that? Some of it is through observation, but a lot more of it now is actually through the use of virtual reality. So you get the idea. You can do all of this in virtual reality and test with your customers, test with your clients in a way that you obviously couldn't do at cost and speed by actually having to physically do it. So our ability to use data in this kind of way is greater than ever before. I mentioned Fitbits earlier on. If I think about a lot of the healthcare work that Kantar Health is doing, it's about combining all of these different data sets. So getting data from Fitbits, getting data from demographics, getting prescription data, getting attitudinal data. How do you combine all of these things to actually really understand the patient in their entirety? So that's I think the most exciting aspect of big data. It's not looking at social media or one thing. It's actually saying we've got all of these different sources of data, and there's now a real ability to combine this data to create an understanding which we could never have had before, and to do that at much faster speeds and to do that at much lower cost. Now, in terms of doing that, we're really trying to do two things. We're trying to understand what people are doing, to actually understand behavior, but as critically, we're trying to understand why they're doing it. And a lot of the behavioral data out there explains what happens. You know, the Fitbit can tell you that my heart is racing at a certain pace, or my loyalty card will tell you that I've bought these products from these stores, or my TV data might tell you that I've watched these TV programs. But none of that really helps you understand why it's happening. So in terms of really driving marketing, and this question of how do we use data and insights to really drive marketing, the what is really important, but equally important is the why. So combining behavioral data with survey data, combining all of those data sources is critical to help you understand what's happening, but why it's happening as well. Now, from a client point of view, from an advertiser point of view, from an agency point of view, there's still a very big gap between everything that I've shown you up till now and what actually happens in terms of creative execution, in terms of media plans. There's still a gap. And that gap is because most clients, most agencies have not figured out how to really incorporate a lot of the data and the insights which are available into the day-to-day way in which they work, in which they plan media, in which they buy media, in terms of the way that they actually create campaigns, they think about big ideas. We still have a situation where there's too much of a data and insight silo and a media and creative silo, and that those two worlds aren't working together. And I think collectively, that's one of our biggest tasks. How do we break down that silo to make sure that the data and the insights which are there can actually drive a lot more of marketing? And as you think about it, I would suggest that you think about two questions. The first question, if you're an agency or if you're a client in this room, is really look at your creative briefs. Your media briefs, and ask yourself, do those briefs really incorporate the relevant data and insights learnings? You look at most creative briefs and most media briefs, they still talk about standard demographics. They still talk about we're trying to target 18 to 25-year-old women, or the over 55s, or very broad groups. But we've got an ability to actually be much more specific and much more granular about what groups we really want to influence. We want to influence people who came to Marina Bay Sands on a Thursday who went out and bought a Coke at lunchtime. We've got the ability to do that, but our briefs are not written that way. So have a look at your creative briefs, have a look at your media briefs, and really ask yourselves, are you and your agencies, the client and the agencies, really writing media and creative briefs which take into account the specific audiences that you really want to influence? And by specific audiences, I don't mean broad demographics, I mean audiences that are defined through a mixture of behavioral and attitudinal factors. So look at those briefs and ask yourselves whether or not you're doing that enough. And I think that the second thing to look at, and that's whether you're an agency or a client, is really step back and ask yourself whether or not you are actually accessing all of the data and insights which are coming into your organization. We've done audits on some of our clients, and they have 400-500 different data sources coming into the organization. It's coming from their CRM databases, it's coming from media, it's coming from agencies, it's coming from transactions, it's coming from people ringing up their call centers, it's coming from research agencies, and usually all of those different data streams are not telling you the same story. They're often contradictory. There's often small nuggets in one of them that you need to explore. So a lot of the value in terms of looking at all of these data and insights comes from looking at all of those data streams and really looking at some of the contradictions in the data. Why are there contradictions? What does it tell you? So you need people who are much more comfortable with looking across data sets, as well as people who are comfortable looking within individual data sets. But that's where you're going to find a lot of the nuggets. You'll find a lot of the gold in those contradictions. So again, whether you're an agency or a client, ask yourselves, are you really accessing all of the different data sources and insight sources and data streams that are available to you? And are you really understanding what the stories are that are coming out of those things? Because the biggest issue that most advertisers have got is not that there isn't enough data, it's that there's too much data. There's so much data that people are losing sight of the need to create stories out of that data to really understand what the ideas are that should be driving their marketing campaigns. So just to finish off, I think we're living in an incredibly exciting time. We have access to so much more stuff. We have access to so many more insights and data streams. We have an organizational issue as an industry to make sure that all of those data streams and all of those insights are really mined in an appropriate way to be able to drive marketing. But the clients and the agencies that are doing that are getting huge benefits out of it, and it's something that really everyone should and could be doing. Thank you very much.